of us benefit from the use of machines and equipment. They make our jobs easier and help us to be more productive. Each of the machines we use runs on some form of energy. This energy can be furnished in several ways, including electricity, pneumatics, and hydraulics. While the results of this energy assist us in many ways, because of its great power, energy can also be dangerous. We need to be careful when we work around it. Frequently, energy-related injuries are caused when one person is working on equipment and someone else inadvertently turns on the power, putting the equipment back into operation. In 1989, to help guard against these situations, OSHA enacted new lockout-tagout regulations. These regulations protect people working on setup, repair, or maintenance of machinery and equipment from the energy used to run these machines. OSHA estimates these laws save over 100 lives and prevent over 60,000 injuries each year. The concept of lockout-tagout is fairly simple. The object is to disable the machine being serviced by isolating it from its power or energy source. To do this, locks, tags, and other mechanisms are placed on energy isolation devices, such as switch boxes and valves. Situations demanding lockout-tagout procedures arise more often than we realize. These situations include repairing circuits, clearing and oiling machinery, cleaning jammed mechanisms, rebuilding equipment, and performing machine setup. The OSHA lockout-tagout regulations apply to most industrial and commercial situations. The purpose of the regulations is to help prevent employees from being injured when working on machinery. To accomplish this, the regulations call for all facilities to implement a lockout-tagout program called an Energy Control Plan. This plan must include a written lockout-tagout program, which consists of two major components: the development of lockout-tagout procedures and the training of employees in these procedures. The energy that powers our machines and equipment can be dangerous. Taking care to see that we don't get hurt is what lockout-tagout is all about. There are several different types of energy associated with the machinery and equipment we work with. The most common are electrical, hydraulic, and pneumatic. Each of these types of energy can exist in two states: active and stored. Energy is active when it is being used to perform work, such as when a constant electric current flows through a machine to turn rotors and gears. However, energy can also exist in a stored state, waiting to be used. An example of this is the electricity held in capacitors, which are used in many machines. Any type of energy can cause us harm, either in its active or stored form. So we need to remember to use lockout-tagout procedures when working with all types and states of energy. Remember, lockout-tagout basically involves using your common sense. The lockout step isolates a machine from its source of energy. Tagging the machine communicates to other personnel the type of work being performed. There are many types of lockout devices. The most common are padlocks, chains, and valve clamps. More specialized devices can also be used, such as wedges, key blocks, and pins. These are most often used with hydraulic or pneumatic systems. Tagout devices provide visual warnings that work is being performed on the machine or piece of equipment. Tags identify the person or persons working on the machine and can also indicate reasons that the equipment is out of service. Remember, tags should only be used to provide information. By themselves, they will not secure energy isolation devices. The best practice is to lock out energy sources wherever possible. If you are involved in activities requiring lockout-tagout procedures, your employer will provide the necessary devices. These must be identified as lockout-tagout devices only. They cannot be used for any other function and may not be shared with other workers. You should also never use non-designated devices for lockout-tagout. For instance, you cannot remove a padlock from a locker or toolbox and use it to lock out an electrical panel. Lockout-tagout devices must be easy to identify as well as durable. They should be able to stand up in your normal operating environment. Finally, locks must be difficult to remove so that they cannot be taken off by accident. Only certain employees in your facility will be authorized to install lockout-tagout devices. These employees must be able to recognize hazardous energy sources. They must also know the type and magnitude of the energy that exists in their work areas, as well as be aware of the methods and means used to control these energy sources. Affected employees work with or around the machines and equipment being serviced in lockout-tagout situations. These employees must know the purpose of your facility's energy control procedures and how they are used. They must also be informed whenever lockout-tagout work is being done. Affected employees are not, however, permitted to restart or re-energize machines once they are locked out. Once all the necessary people are notified, you can proceed with locking out and tagging energy sources. You should use the lockout-tagout mechanisms indicated by the energy isolation devices you are working with. Remember, common energy isolation devices are things such as electrical panels, circuit breakers, and valves. Make sure to consult your facility's written energy control plan and follow company policy. When lockout-tagout procedures are completed, you may need to dissipate stored energy in the machine you are working on. How you do this will depend on the type of system you are dealing with. There are a number of techniques you can use. For hydraulic or pneumatic equipment, you may have to release built-up pressure, adjust valves, or install blanks in piping. Electrical systems may require grounding. For any type of equipment, you may need to block potentially moving parts, release spring tension, and dissipate extreme cold or heat. After dissipating any residual energy, you may have to install additional lockout-tagout mechanisms to complete the lockout of the system. Once you have performed all your lockout-tagout and energy dissipation procedures, you should exercise the machine to make sure that it won't operate. For electrical systems, you will probably want to use a voltmeter to make sure there is no electricity flowing. Once you have verified your lockout, press all start buttons and throw all switches and levers that would normally be used to activate the equipment. After you have determined that your lockout procedures are working, return all these switches and buttons to their off position. Work can then begin on the machinery or equipment you are servicing. There are a number of special situations where additional lockout-tagout procedures must be followed. One of the most important of these occurs when you have a shift or personnel change during the time you are servicing the equipment. In these situations, it is important to maintain continuity. Personnel from the new incoming work shift must install their lockout-tagout devices. Only then can the locks and tags installed by the departing work shift be removed. Other special situations arise when multiple pieces of equipment are powered by the same source, or when equipment is linked functionally to other equipment. In these situations, supervisors should be contacted before any lockout-tagout work is performed. Frequently, we encounter systems that must stay on, where the functioning of the equipment is essential to our facility's normal operation. In these cases, hot work guidelines need to be followed. Again, supervisors should be consulted. They will determine the proper procedures for working on the systems. There are some situations where a buddy system must be used for lockout-tagout. This usually occurs when the power source is not in sight of the operating portions of the machinery. In these situations, one person works on locking out the power while the buddy observes and tests the machinery. We can also encounter situations where a group of people must work together on a locked-out machine. In these cases, we must use lockout-tagout devices designed to permit more than one worker to simultaneously lock out the same power source. Each authorized employee must affix their own lock and tag to this group lockout-tagout device. If a number of groups are to be working on the same machine, one employee can be authorized to represent each group.
So you received the training, you've gone through the...
Outside personnel, such as contractors, may also become involved in these operations. Facility representatives need to inform these people of any internal lockout-tagout activities that are going on. At the same time, contractors must inform facility representatives of their lockout-tagout activity. Once service work is completed, whether it is setup, maintenance, or repair, proper lockout-tagout release procedures must be followed. First, remove all non-essential items and tools from around the machine. Next, clear affected personnel from the immediate area. Then, check to make sure the machine is ready to operate. This includes verifying there is no load on any electrical circuits. Each employee who installed a lockout-tagout device on the machine must then personally remove that device. In emergency situations, management personnel can be authorized to remove a device, but only when the original employee is unavailable and cannot be easily recalled. When this happens, the employee whose lock was removed must be notified why the lock was removed before he resumes his work. Once lockout-tagout devices are removed, the equipment should be test run. If the equipment cannot be started and observed functioning from the area where the lockout-tagout devices have been located, the buddy system should be used. Some facilities have special procedures for returning lockout-tagout devices. They are stored in a designated location, and employees are required to sign in the return of each device in a lockout-tagout log. If you have any questions, these procedures can be found in your facility's written lockout-tagout program. During the lockout-tagout procedure, situations can arise where machines must be temporarily restarted. This is usually during a prolonged shutdown for rebuilding or major maintenance. In these cases, this temporary startup should be handled exactly as a normal release and restart. First, lockout-tagout devices are removed, and the release procedure is followed. The machine is then restarted. Once this temporary restart has been accomplished, lockout-tagout procedures must again be followed to resecure the energy sources. Now that we have taken a look at general lockout-tagout procedures and some special situations that we may encounter, let's look at some of the rules for performing lockout-tagout on specific types of power systems. When working with electrical systems, as with any energy system, always follow general lockout-tagout principles. Remember, the object of lockout-tagout is to eliminate the source of electrical power to the equipment being serviced. This will be spelled out for you in your facility's written lockout-tagout program. First, identify all energy sources. Shut off the equipment at the point of operation before disconnecting it. Be careful. Accidental explosions can occur when power is disconnected while lines are under load. The switches on most switch boxes or panels are located on the right-hand side. In this case, to cut the power, stand to the right of the switch box. Turn your head away from the box and use your left hand to move the switch to the off position. Then, use a padlock and tag and appropriate lockout-tagout procedures to isolate the energy source. Remember, most boxes have two places to attach a lock. One will lock the box shut, while the other one will lock the power off. Make sure that you lock the power off during a lockout-tagout procedure. If there is more than one source of electric power to the machine, it may be easier or necessary to lock out a main panel. Some specialized equipment may require you to remove fuses. In these cases, it is not enough to simply pull the fuse out of the box. The box must also be locked and tagged. If you find out that standard lockout of the box is impossible, consult your supervisor. Once lockout-tagout procedures have been completed on your electrical system, attempt to start and operate the equipment. Remember, you also need to test the circuitry for power using a device such as a voltmeter. Don't forget, if you have capacitors integrated into your electrical system, they may contain stored electrical charges. Accidental release of these charges can lead to hazardous situations. Make sure you check any electrical machinery you are about to service to see if it has circuits that include capacitors. If it does, be sure to follow proper procedure and ground the capacitors before starting work. Hydraulic and pneumatic equipment must be treated differently from electrical machinery. Here, lockout-tagout usually involves pipes and valves. In these situations, the hazard is the potential high-pressure release of steam, gas, hydraulic fluid, or other liquids. To adequately lock out these systems, you must use a padlock and chain or some type of valve clamp. Then install the tag. Remember, existing pressure in lines can be hazardous. Bleed any pressurized lines before beginning service work. With hydraulic and pneumatic systems, it is good to look for downstream valves to test the effectiveness of your lockout. Pipe dividers, called blinds, are useful when installed in particularly complex systems. Blinds act to segment piping, allowing you to do sectional bleeding and offering the ultimate protection in such situations. An additional precaution should be taken when working with hydraulic or pneumatic equipment. These systems make use of heavy moving parts. During lockout, we need to prevent these parts from slipping due to gravity or spring tension. Wedges, blocks, or pins should be used for this purpose. These devices hold moving parts securely in place. Because of the nature of hydraulic and pneumatic equipment, these moving parts can often be affected by vibrations from nearby vehicle traffic or other machine operations, which is another reason why wedges and blocks are needed. You may also need to isolate the locked-out equipment to make sure that these moving parts aren't jostled free as the equipment is being serviced. Barricades or other devices help to limit traffic. You may even need to arrange for the shutdown of nearby machines. Lockout-tagout is essential when working on most equipment and machinery. Use common sense and you will understand and remember lockout-tagout procedures. Remember these basics. Workers must identify all energy sources. Each worker must attach their own lockout-tagout devices at each power source. Equipment and systems must be tested after locks and tags are in place. The person removing the last lockout device must make sure work is completed and equipment is safe to operate. Communication and working together. These are the keys to good lockout-tagout procedures.